Hey, welcome back to the Unbelievable Podcast. I'm BJ Reidell, back here with my guy, Drew Mahowald. And today, well, it's the first time that we've spoken with you guys since the 2021 NFL Draft. So we have a few things to catch up on. And we're going to spend the next couple episodes doing just that. So for today, Drew and I are going to focus on the Vikings' first third round pick. So they're the two picks that the Vikings made first in the 2021 NFL Draft. In Christian Darrisaw and also quarterback Kellen Mond. So that'll be the topic of the discussion today. We'll go over kind of, our analysis of the players, how they fit, do they fit, and how much of an impact can we expect to see both now and in the future. And of course, with the quarterback, I'm sure we'll go off on multiple different tangents, but that's the goal for today. Talk about those two guys and get you guys out of here in a quick 30 or so. So let's get right into it here then. So just as a whole, right, the Vikings did a lot of the things that I think we were clamoring for as fans. First and foremost, they addressed the offensive line. That's super obvious, right? I mean, they did it not just with Christian Darrisaw, who we'll talk about today, but with Wyatt Davis as well, who we'll talk about next week. They sat back and kind of bided their time and acquired more assets, which we all knew was going to happen. It turns out that they were able to fleece the Jets out of getting the guy that everyone thought the Vikings were going to take. And all in all, they came together and they were able to put together, another group of, draft picks that seemingly will have a direct impact on the Vikings both immediately and in the near future, the not so distant future, I should say. And that all starts with Christian Darrisaw, right? So the Vikings, of course, started with the round 14th overall pick in the first round, moved back about 9 picks to 23 to pick up Darrisaw. They moved back with the Jets in doing so. They lost the 4th round pick and acquired 2 third-round picks. This seems like, kind of the goal, right? When we were talking about what the Vikings needed to do. Don't do anything stupid, right? Don't throw too many resources away that you can't get back in the future. Get the best player available. And if possible, get someone that can have a direct impact on your team, most notably the offensive line. The Vikings did all of those things with one simple pick and acquired more assets in the process.
Yeah, that was a very, very good move, I thought, by Spielman, and nothing surprising, right, with Rick Spielman. The guy loves to trade down more than perhaps anything in the world. And so actually surprising this was the only trade he made in this draft, which is, I think it's the only time in the Rick Spielman era the Vikings have made less than 2 trades in a draft. But it was a good one at that, right? You mentioned the value that they got, a couple of picks from the Jets to move up, to 14. Vikings go down to 23, and it sounds like the Vikings still got the guy they actually wanted. They saw that Darrisaw was there at 14, right? But there was a bunch of names that could fall before him, so wanted to move down. And I saw that I think was it maybe Courtney Cronin, or there was others reporting. I shouldn't mention her name if I'm not for sure that it was her, but there was some reports that the Vikings actually wanted to move back up again after getting to 23 to about 20 or 19 or so to make sure they did get Darrisaw. But luckily he did fall to them anyway. So they clearly were high on this guy. And I mean, it's what's not to be high on. Highest graded pass blocker in the Power 5 last year by PFF. Just huge size, a ton of power. And, in terms of zone scheme, what the Vikings have been running, it seems like he's a perfect fit there too. So all things point to this guy being sort of a left tackle of the future for the Vikings, which is something that they really haven't had in a while, and a big get, and something that, the Vikings, again, they really needed long-term here, whether the quarterback's Kirk Cousins, whether it's Kellen Mond, whether it's somebody else. We'll talk about that later, but left tackle of the future is a cornerstone piece of any offense, and the Vikings got one.
Absolutely. And that's the major point here. Before we actually talk about the impact that Darrisaw can have and the type of player that he is, I want to talk about the move that ultimately resulted in the Vikings acquiring him. Right. So we've discussed this a little bit. The Vikings moved down 9 picks. They acquired a couple picks with the Jets. I think that this move is more than just acquiring cool resources, right? You fleece the Jets, who hasn't, right? I think it's more than that. This is a turn for the Vikings in terms of their drafting style and what they're willing to do with their resources, right? Every draft analyst and their mother had Elijah Vera Tucker from USC going to the Vikings at 14. Now, part of that was, and I will say that most writers put a little asterisk saying, I fully expect the Vikings to trade down, but that was the guy, right? That was who everyone expected the Vikings to take. And to a degree, I kind of expected it too. I mean, they took Garrett Bradbury. They don't have a problem taking interior offensive linemen at that pick. And,
They also don't have a
seemingly,
problem taking the guy that seems to be the consensus pick among
right.
everybody, every draft expert analyst, right? I mean, Treadwell was one of those guys. Bradbury was one of those guys. Like it happens, and it's happened in the past where the Vikings do pick the chalk idea, right?
Right. So ultimately, what the Vikings did here was at the 14th overall pick, they're sitting there. They have the easy move, right? Just put in the slip, pick up Vera Tucker. You solidify your interior offensive line. No one's going to get mad at you except for the value people, right? Us, the people who are sick of drafting interior offensive linemen before 26 because it's just not good value. The Vikings actively went against that, which I think is awesome because it shows a contemporary stance with regard to value on the offensive line. The Vikings traded down so that the Jets could move up to get a guard while the Vikings got a tackle
Yeah.
and draft compensation at that. That's an amazing move. That's not like, in a sense, like, yeah, Vera Tucker could be the best guard in the NFL 5 years from now. And if Darrisaw is an above average offensive lineman, specifically a left tackle, it's you still do it every time because the value is significant. And we're talking about a blindside protector that you ended up getting more assets for in trying to get this guy. That's a big win for the Vikings just in itself. Not only did you acquire a great player, you did it. The process was awesome. The process was perfect for 2021 NFL drafting and going about your business in a way that's going to, make this team better long term, as opposed to just solving some immediate need just to, please the choir.
Yeah, that was the most encouraging part for me. Was I was pleasantly surprised by what seems to be, like you said, a contemporary, like modern process of drafting, which, I think you'd think kind of old school. You think of drafting big maulers in the offensive line, and you think of drafting running backs early. You think of that type of thing. But it's not. I mean, Darrisaw, again, I'll say it again. I think the highest graded pass blocker, Power Five, last year in the draft. So they're clearly focusing on pass protection. They want to become more modern. I know Mike Zimmer is Mike Zimmer and his philosophy, but clearly there's a forward thinking motive here for the Vikings in the front office and getting Darrisaw and trading down to do so after kind of the consensus was a guard, Elijah Vera Tucker. So I'm all for that move. I love that. And then of course Spielman does what he does, wheeling and dealing, making moves, gaining value while moving down in the draft. Also, Vikings taking value away from the Jets. It's kind of a yearly thing now with Kirk Cousins, then Anthony Barr committing there, then choosing to come back to Minnesota. And of course, now with this trade, it seems like the Vikings are fleecing the Jets one way or another every single year.
Okay, so now let's talk about what the Vikings got, right? 6'5", 314 pounds. He fits the kind of the stereotype for what your body should look like if you're going to be an offensive tackle. Really good movement skills. If you just pick up the highlight tape, you're going to see how quickly and easily he's able to pull and get downfield with guys who are a lot faster than him. That fits super well with what the Vikings like to do, especially with that zone running scheme. Moving to the outside, you're going to have an offensive tackle that can pull and get out in front of your running back, especially with Dalvin Cook being as fast and as quick as he is. You need to have someone that is going to offer that same type of flexibility on your offensive line, and I think Darrisaw fulfills that for sure. The thing that sticks out to me, and this is completely irrelevant, but just the fact that his name's Darrisaw, like, does that not just sound like a guy who's gonna like absolutely cake you? Like, it's not. he just sounds scary, and that's what I want. Right? I want Bryant McKinney on my as my blindside protector. I want a guy who is going to fight the other dude, kill him if necessary, because that's the mentality that you need to have to play offensive line. And I think, that's one of the question marks here with this guy too, right? Despite the fact that his last name is, basically, like a weapon, essentially.
It does sound like that a little bit now that you say it out loud. Darrisaw. It sounds
you
like
grab the Darrisaw from the garage. Yeah, like it sounds
seriously.
like.
But I think it's also funny that this is off topic a little bit, but the Vikings drafted Chaz Surratt in the third round. You look at the tape in that Vatek versus North Carolina game, you'll see Darrisaw just dismantling Chaz throughout that whole game. It's interesting that the Vikings saw that and also picked up Chaz. But yeah, Darrisaw, I mean, he's kind of got everything that you want in a franchise left tackle nowadays. You know, great pass blocking skills, movement, athleticism. You know, going to be great like in the screen game, right? Out to move around. You know, and the Vikings seemingly run almost too many screens, right? With Dalvin Cook, it seems like it's their go-to second and long play. But if you get a guy like Darrisaw who can move around all over the field very swiftly and easily, then you might as well go for it. Then the next part I'm curious about now. So he's got the dog mentality. He's got everything that mentally that you want, that Mike Zimmer wants for sure. But then the skills and the modern movement of kind of a 2021 left tackle. But now I'm curious about the rest of the offensive line. So clearly this guy you presume is going to be your starting left tackle.
Well, this is important too. This in
right,
itself,
because
like that.
Yeah, like what moves around?
Questions.
Yeah, Ezra Cleveland now. I mean, he second rounder last year. What happens to him?
He's
Is he going to be a guard now? So there are questions to be answered here. And then of course, but I will say this: the idea of Darrisaw and O'Neal as your bookends long term should make Vikings fans excited, because I think that could be a really, really good group compared to the rest of the NFL.
Absolutely. You know, this pick did a lot of different things. You know, part of the reason why people were saying the Vikings would take Vera Tucker was because they thought that Cleveland was going to be the offensive tackle of the future, right? He had played guard last year. Everyone kind of said, well, his future's probably a tackle. There's more value at tackle, obviously. This pick seemingly answers that question about where Cleveland's going to play. It also, creates, or I should say, it answers more questions than it creates by just slotting Darrisaw in there. And then, of course, drafting Wyatt Davis later on. You have a better feel for what's actually happening, right? And the direction. You mentioned you're going to have Brian O'Neill and Christian Darrisaw, hopefully, as your bookends of the future for 4 or 5, hopefully even more years. Mm-hmm. That sounds really good on paper.
Yeah.
And the way you went about it the process was good. I mean, when you look at this pick and everything that it answers for the Vikings, was this the perfect pick? Was there something the Vikings could have done better? Would it honestly have been better to trade mortgage the house to move up and get Justin Fields?
I think that's the elephant in the room here that we haven't yet talked about. And I think I personally kind of would have taken that chance, especially now in hindsight, knowing that he went to a division rival. Right. That's the kind of the kicker, right? I mean, if he had gone to, the Jets or, any out of division team, I would have been more accepting of the Vikings kind of staying back and waiting. But, in hindsight, knowing that he went to Chicago, Vikings still have to play Justin Fields for the foreseeable future. It is concerning that they didn't quite make that move. Now, in general, though, even though the Vikings didn't make that move, I'm still pleasantly surprised that they are and were being aggressive about the quarterback position, which is something I know me and you have talked about a ton over the past few months here leading up to the draft. We didn't anticipate the Vikings being QB needy or QB, right, ready to get a QB. We kind of had the perception that they were totally satisfied with Kirk Cousins, that there didn't seem to be any effort to address even the backup position. And so it's at the very least, I'm very encouraged by the Vikings going after quarterback. As we kind of transition here maybe to Kellen Mond in that pick, but they're at least going after quarterback. They're addressing the position, and it sounds like they are ready to take Fields at 14 if he had fallen to them, which I'm very, very pleasantly surprised by. And they're noticing now that teams, if you got to get that quarterback, on a rookie contract and then load your roster around that quarterback. And that's really the key, or the winning formula right now that's popular in the NFL.
Okay, so it's the perfect transition here, because the obvious question with the Justin Fields situation is by getting the quarterback in the second round, by getting Mond in the second round, are you is it okay that you didn't get Justin Fields anymore? That's my first question here.
Right.
Because you missed on Justin Fields, that sucks. I was disappointed as well. It hurt, especially because, like you said,
I think the Vikings were hurt by it too. I mean, especially the way he went to the Bears. I think they really wanted him.
So is the combination of getting Darrisaw, hopefully your left tackle of future, as well as Kellen Mond, who we'll get deeper into this, but I think it's fair to say his level, his potential, and his floor are considerably lower than Justin Fields. So you're sacrificing a lot just in terms of overall potential and likelihood of success. But you are getting a bigger piece for your offensive line, so you're pleasing that element. And if you move up to get Justin Fields, you're basically not addressing your offensive line, at least
Right.
not until the third or fourth round at the very best.
Right.
So did they make the safe choice again? Like, should we be annoyed with them for playing it safe and responsible here? Like, would it have been better ultimately? Like, clear mind, would it honestly have been a better move for the Vikings to be aggressive and try to get Justin Fields?
I mean, it's obviously we can't say now. I guess my gut is to say yes, just because I think Fields is one of those, long-term franchise type quarterbacks that could be an elite player, and if you get that chance, you have to take it on a player like that. But I will say this is also the safer move that they made, or that they, I guess, didn't make, right? By not trading a whole first-round pick to move up what would have been 3 spots in the draft, ultimately. Whereas, Chicago, they actually jumped up 9 spots, and there's more value, I guess, in jumping up, giving up a first-round pick to jump up 9 spots to take a quarterback there. So I understand it from that perspective. I guess the reaction then is, well, if they really wanted him that bad, they would have made the move. And yeah, that's true. But they just, at the position, they were kind of at that point, all right, you're the bank, and he falls 3 more spots. And really, if he gets past 11, Bears don't make that trade, it's very possible he does, because the next 2 picks, I believe, were, what was it, the Giants, or it was, I think, the Chargers there too. So a couple of the teams that already had established franchise quarterbacks there. So, it was really close. We were really close to getting Justin Fields on Minnesota, which would have been a heck of a situation. But ultimately, as we've transitioned to Mond here, again, very pleased that the Vikings even attacked the position in the first place.
Okay, so there's 2 discussions to be had here about Kellen Mond. First and foremost is the process. I think that's always the more important thing here, just because it's something that can be replicated and something that we can actually get mad about, right? Like, if you're doing it wrong, I can be mad about that. Everyone can look back and be like, oh, this process, you should have drafted this guy. This guy made more sense here. Like, everyone can look back and do that, but you can't. If you can look back and point to the actual issue with the process, it's a lot easier to have a developed, coherent argument about why the Vikings did or did not screw this thing up. Now, the process, in my opinion, is very good. Drew and I, like he said, have been talking about this for months, and you hear this from Pro Football Focus and everyone else. Just the opportunity to draft a quarterback every year should be on your mind, right? You should be trying to get one second, third, fourth round, probably every single year, unless you have an Aaron Rodgers
every other year. I mean, unless you got a very well-established superstar quarterback already.
There's no reason to pay a veteran quarterback $5 or $6 million to sit on your bench and be the backup, and you're going to suck if that backup has to play. It just makes more sense. Just get a rookie quarterback, find out what you got. The Vikings did that. Now, I think we can both agree that the process is good. They made an aggressive move to go get a quarterback that could potentially be the quarterback of the future. It could also be a complete bust of a pick, and you wasted your top 3rd round pick when you could have done something else with it. I mean, there's arguments for both sides. Whatever, you know what they are. I probably don't need to say them. The next issue here is the guy that they drafted, right?
Yeah.
That's what we care about right now. Yeah, the process is more important long term, but in the moment here, I want to know more about Kellen Mond. I want to know why. Why is this the guy that you want to gamble on? Is it a respectable gamble? Like, am I throwing money at something that's not gonna sell, or is this something that maybe with the right tweaks, the right coaching, the right whatever it is that gets these guys to play at the level that they do, then maybe this guy can become that. I don't know the answers to these questions. I'm asking these out loud because I don't know, because I think there's real question marks about this guy.
Yeah.
I think there's a real argument that you could draft this guy in the 1st round, and then you could also draft him in the 6th or 7th round, because of if you're someone that favors potential, you like this guy.
Mm-hmm.
Great body type, great athleticism, great arm strength, seems to be intelligent and understanding of the game. All of those things are great, but when you look at what's actually happening on film, it's concerning. Especially because it's the Vikings developing this guy. If this was Andy Reid developing this guy.
Yeah, that's
Might
a
be
good
a little
point.
bit incompetent. But this is the Vikings. We've seen incompetence forever developing the quarterback position.
Yeah, I mean,
Are you concerned or not?
that's a good point. I didn't even really consider. But in terms of the process, I like picking the kind of volatile guy. I think volatility when you're drafting a guy's who you project to be a backup initially, and then has the potential to be. I'm not going to, this is going to be hyperbole, but has the potential to be a superstar with the mobility, the arm strength, the kind of ability to extend plays, things like that. He has that sort of playmaking trait to him. But then, like you said, the development needs to happen. The pocket presence and just the consistent accuracy is going to have to be developed a little bit. So, but I like the picking the guy that's the most volatile, I think, of those sort of three in that range. That was kind of mid-round quarterback prospects that there were here. Now, for what it's worth, I mean, this is, a lot of, I guess, draft experts, draft pundits thought highly of Mond. Chris Sims, who has kind of famously been nailing QB rankings over the past few years, actually had Mond above Fields and Lance in his rankings, for what it's worth. So there's reason to really like him, and it's because we see it all the time. I mean, QB performance in college is not always a smooth portrayal of what it will be in the NFL, whether they become worse or better. So got to get the right situation, got to get the right weapons around him, pass protection, and so. I mean, we'll see. I hope we don't see Mond in 2021 on the field, just because that would mean Kirk Cousins either is hurt or is playing very poorly, which would put the Vikings in a bad position. But I like the idea long term of the project and kind of having a plan to build on if Cousins ends up departing Minnesota.
So the number one pick, like the number one win with the Kellen Mond pick, is just that Sean Mannion is no longer your backup quarterback.
I know that's
Honestly,
your top.
I'm being serious.
Yeah.
I'm being serious. Like, that's a huge win to have. Just think of it. This is how I think about it every single time. If Kirk Cousins goes down in week 6, he's going to be out for anywhere between 2 and 8 weeks. You don't actually know. You don't have a good timetable. It could be a couple weeks. It could be a couple months. You don't know. Would you rather have the guy who you literally have never seen throw the ball 15 yards in the air before, starting at quarterback for 2 to 8 weeks? Or would you rather just gamble with the guy that you don't know, that has potential, and no one has the answer yet? I already know the answer with Sean Mannion. Kellen Mond, I don't know the answer. I'm skeptical. I'm very skeptical. I'm probably the most skeptical of anyone you're listening to, just because I really am not confident that this one's going to work out. But I don't know. And that's really important here, because I do know with Sean Mannion, and that in itself makes the process a good one, right? You get you add an unknown. I mean, what if this guy is really good? Patrick Mahomes wasn't exactly great at Texas Tech. You can develop some skills, and you can develop, cerebral ability and reading plays. These traits can be developed if you have the body type and the talent. And I think it's fair to say that Kellen Mond has those things.
I mean, and you pair him with, hypothetically, Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson, right? In the event, he gets on the field this year or next year, and those guys are out there at his disposal. I mean, that's already a huge upgrade in terms of what he's played with before.
Right.
So, I mean, I'm not exactly sure if there's a quantifiable way to measure how much value a receiver brings to a quarterback and things like that. But you see it all the time in the NFL, where a quarterback who seemingly wasn't all that impressive in college just turns it up in the NFL because the position that they're presented in, that they're brought up in, and that they start in is that good. I think Dak Prescott's another one. Mid-round pick for Dallas, gets the start because of Romo's injury. He's in a great situation with an awesome offensive line. You got Ezekiel Elliott in the backfield. You got a couple of key, really good wide receivers out on the perimeter, and he lights it up. Dallas starts, I think, when they went 12-4 or something that year. So now I'm not saying Mond is going to be Dak Prescott, but I think there's something to be said about the situation that QBs are in, and it's my whole mantra about like modern team building in the NFL. so much of your resources and your energy needs to be spent on the QB position, both finding the right guy, taking chances on, your draft picks on a quarterback, and then investing your resource into building the perfect environment for that quarterback to succeed, because that position kind of, carries the rest of the franchise, really, the success that team has. So, again, pleasantly surprised by the Vikings, really targeting that position this year, even though it's the signals they've been sending the past couple of years now have been, we love Kirk. He's our guy. Kirk's our guy. We're going to extend him and extend him again. But I love that they went after the position still to add another option in the event that Kirk isn't the guy moving forward.
Okay, so we'll wrap up our discussion here with these early round selections here, and get back to it next week. But I want to finish with one final question here. So you have been mentioning kind of throughout here that you're pleasantly surprised that the Vikings have made the decision that they did to, not only, attempt to get a quarterback, but also actively address it with Kellen Mond in the third round. Which move or which decision or which attempt means more to you? The thought to go up and try to get Justin Fields and actually look to see what it would require to go and get this guy, or the decision to actually select Kellen Mond in the third round? What do you think says more about the Vikings in terms of, the direction they want to go? Was it the fact that they were willing to, at least think about going up and getting a guy that he's there to replace Kirk Cousins? If you draft Justin Fields, he's there to replace Kirk Cousins.
Right.
And they thought about that. Does that matter more, or does it matter more that the Vikings were like, you know what, we do need a quarterback. We're going to get one in the third round. We're actually going to do this instead of drafting, at the time, a guard, which everyone was yelling about.
Right. I mean, clearly, to me, it's more meaningful that they were, very close to getting Justin Fields.
I think so too.
Clearly wanted to. Reports indicated that they were, making calls, trying to move up once he kind of felt like the 8, 9, 10 range. The price was just a little bit too high for what they kind of were willing to give up. And then, ultimately, at the end of the day, I don't think I'm as upset about it if he doesn't go to the Chicago Bears and a division rival. So that's the kind of thing that hurts to me. But that again, this whole the idea that they were looking at Justin Fields, they were going to take him if he was there at 14. I love that, because they are clearly putting a high priority on making sure that your team is set at the quarterback position. Not that Kirk necessarily not that the Vikings aren't set with Kirk, but you can always improve at the position, and it's the most important position.
It's Alex Smith, Patrick Mahomes situation.
Yeah, that's exactly what it would have mirrored that to a T if Justin Fields had fell to the Vikings. So I love the process that they went through here, and I maybe would have gambled a little bit more, kind of given up a little bit more to go up there, but I guess the consolation of Kellen Mond at the top of the third is certainly not a bad idea. Plus, I like that the Vikings reportedly told Kirk ahead of time that they were going to go after quarterback, something that Green Bay Packers did not do, and it's looking like it's biting them in the butt right now.
Yeah, it seems like every single team except the Green Bay Packers do that.
Yeah.
They just want to be sneaky for literally no reason. Kind of a segue out of that, I suppose, and this is the real last question then. You just mentioned that the Vikings kind of did the professional thing and were like, hey, Kirk, we're going to draft a quarterback. Kirk also did the professional thing and was like, hey, everyone, welcome to the team. Looking forward to
welcome to the team. Yeah.
Right.
Sharing just the generic sharing of the social posts by the Vikings accounts.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. So we've seen kind of the coach speak or the media talk or whatever it is. The question that I have for you, and this is something that we kind of briefly entertained kind of jokingly, like that it would be cool if the Vikings drafted a quarterback and they got the same effect on Kirk Cousins as the Packers got from Rodgers in terms of like pissing this guy off and making him play level. Like the question is, I don't know what word to use, but is there any fallout? Is there any consequence? Is there any ramification to this decision with regard to Kirk Cousins specifically? I know Rick Spielman has already said that Kirk Cousins is the starter. Kellen Mond is not going to be the guy at any point in time. He addressed that immediately. He's been completely transparent with his quarterback. But is there is there something to look at here?
I mean, we'll never know what's actually said behind closed doors. But I feel like. Now, this is from the outside looking in, obviously, but I feel like Kirk's almost too professional in that he's
Sounds like a
never
robot.
going to make it an issue because he doesn't want it to look bad on himself in a way. Does that make sense? Right. So like I feel like Rodgers is we're gonna compare this to Rodgers inherently, right? Because of what's going on presently right now. But he's the type that to me it just does. I don't think he really cares too much about what somebody else thinks of him or what he's like he doesn't care if his beliefs, thoughts get in the way of kind of how he's perceived, if that makes sense. So I don't think Kirk would do that. I don't think if he is upset, I think he would do his best to keep it kind of private. So I don't think it'll be an issue, and I think Kirk will be professional about it, all things considered. And I think if play is poor, I think he'll also be aware of that. So I really don't see it being an issue. But of course, we have nothing to. There's no issue to be had.
Can it be a positive?
It could. Now, again, on the other side of the spectrum, I don't think Kirk has that.
I don't think so either. That's why I'm asking.
That kind of trait to get fired up about something like maybe Rodgers, we could say last year, where maybe the draft pick did motivate Rodgers to take it to another level. Where I don't think Kirk has that extra level necessarily. So there's kind of a good pro and con to it. But I mean, here's the thing: I don't think we'll have anything to even think about here unless Kirk plays like poorly, to start the year or something, or maybe the Vikings have a tough start again, kind of like last year, where they're like 1-5, 1-6, whatever. Then there'll be that discussion, and maybe we'll revisit this. But I don't see, Kirk making a big dramatic deal out of it, like the Rodgers is doing right now.
Yeah. I mean, I think you're probably right. I think he's very low key and just like nauseatingly boring. So I don't expect anything.
Which is, I mean, good and bad. It's good and bad. And I think in this case, it's going to be mostly a good thing just for the sake of media attention, QB controversy, drama, things like that can be a distraction.
Absolutely. I mean, and you look at the thing that's going on with Rodgers, like elephant in the room, something that we haven't talked about on this show. But I mean, Aaron Rodgers may not this is important, right? Aaron Rodgers is like him leaving the NFC North puts the Vikings in the driver's seat. Literally, because Matthew Stafford's already gone as well, and you're going to be dealing with Justin Fields, who, I mean, I think Justin Fields is going to be a good quarterback. I don't think he's going to be a good rookie quarterback. Like, if Aaron Rodgers is really gone, like, this is a big deal, right? Like,
well, yeah. I mean, I'll say this. I think the Vikings could have drafted 6 or 7 kickers in this draft, and it would still be a success because it sounds like Rodgers is going to be out of the league.
Well, let's not go that far.
They're out of the division. So, I would say, I mean, overall, the weekend would have been a success because that guy's gone. And
you think he's actually going to be gone? Let's put that on record now. And
I mean, everything that keeps coming out day by day, it seems like it's further evidence that he's told the team he's done. He's not coming back. Now Devontae Adams is sending out cryptic tweets, a la Stephon Diggs a couple years ago. So there's more and more evidence to point towards Rodgers no longer being a Green Bay Packer, whether it's retirement or whether he's going to play for like Denver or Las Vegas. Either way, I mean, I've always been a big Rodgers fan, obviously. And truth be told, we don't exactly know everything that's going on. I would imagine Green Bay maybe regrets not letting him in on some decisions, some plans that clearly have offended Rodgers a little bit, and he wants out. But yeah, I mean, you get Rodgers out of the division, you get your franchise left tackle, you get kind of a plan B at quarterback in the next few years with Kellen Mond. I think this weekend has been huge for the future prospects of the Vikings.
It seems like a good place to end there. This weekend was huge for the future prospects of the Vikings. Keep that in mind. We will be back next week here to discuss more, right? The Vikings did a couple of other things in the middle rounds that are super interesting. I know a little Iowa wide receiver that I'm interested in and kind of curious about how the Vikings may entertain the usage of him. And of course, we'll talk about Wyatt Davis and the rest of this class here. There's some other names here. We already mentioned Chad Surratt and kind of the intrigue that he brings. And then I'm also extremely interested in Cameron Bynum, the Cal cornerback. So we'll spend some time discussing those guys, and then we'll wrap up in a couple of weeks here with the later round dudes that Drew and I don't know absolutely nothing about, and we'll try to learn by that point in time. So thank you as always for listening. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, Spotify, wherever else you listen to your podcast. If you prefer to watch podcasts, you can watch us on YouTube. That's perfectly okay with me. And then you can also find us on Daily Norseman and the Climbing the Pocket Network. Make sure to check out what they're doing there. And for those of you that joined the live feed, even though Drew and I were not there, we appreciate you being there, checking out what they're doing there, and they're doing a lot of cool stuff on the team. So, thank you as always, and we will catch you guys next week.